Hey everyone, I've been experimenting with getting my Octatrack to control my modular system here, and so far I'm making good progress. What I've done is connect, I got some input from the Elektron forum, people are helpful. What I've done is connect, check the MIDI settings on my Elektron. So there's a few things you need to do to get it to work. The OCD maps different settings, so you have your pitch on this side, so CV is pitch, A, B, C, and D, and then these are gate outputs, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you also have an additional set of gate outputs, 5 through 12, so you have 12 gate outputs, which is really nice, and then you have 4 pitch CV controls that you can manage with the Octatrack through this device, or any MIDI controller you can use with. Others use other MIDI controllers. And I just created a really simple patch to make it really easy to figure this out, so I can get experience controlling one oscillator at a time from the Octatrack. And then the other thing you need to do is, if you go into your MIDI settings, you can change the notes too, and that will change your notes when it plays and so forth, and that's interesting. And then you also have the effects, so you can create different effects. And also these are, when you have the MIDI button pressed on the Octatrack, these have your settings. So there's a lot of stuff you can configure. I'm just doing a real basic configuration here. Didn't have to really change much. So if you go into each of these, these are your MIDI channels, what they're set to. So T1 is set to channel 1, and these are off. And my understanding from reading the CV.OCD document is they start at 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then these are your gate channels. I have to go back and double check. I know there's some things with programming this device through the utility website. I haven't gone to that yet. I've just been experimenting to see out of the box what I can get working. So once I have that set up, which looks okay, the other thing you need to do is after do that is you need to set up the tracks to through machines. So if you want to assign one oscillator to T1, you need to set it up to a through machine and a MIDI mapping to channel 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But I like to mix it up and add some samples from the Octatrack as well. So right now I only need 4 of these for my setup, because I only have 2 oscillators here, and I have 2 here, so I really only have 4 I need to control. And technically you can make the Kermit an oscillator, but we won't go there right now. Just to make it simple, that's what I'm doing. So these are set to through machines, and then you can see the signal. If this is lighting up, it's getting signal. The second thing I found out from someone on the forum on Elektron Octatrack is you need to route the output from the oscillator. So each of these has an output jack. For example, most of them have that. Right now I'm just testing with Cursus Iteratas. So you have the output has to go from the output to from the oscillator to your Octatrack. And so on the Octatrack, I have this connected to, let's see, it's actually connected, I believe, to B, and you can verify that by seeing the signal. So this is getting the signal from the Cursus Iteratas. So that's B. And actually this I'm going to unplug because I was testing it earlier, but I'm just trying to simplify my setup to make it easier for testing purposes. So I'm going to take this out just to worry about one thing at a time, so my life is easier and I don't have any confusion on why something's not working. So well, once we have that set up, it's getting signal through the input. This is input A and B, so this is A, B, C, and D. And there's a setting, if you only wanted to get it from input A, I believe you'd go function, the setup, yeah, so here, yeah, if you go back here, input A, B, it's just A, input C, D, so it's only getting it from A, but for some reason it's actually showing signal from B, which is interesting. I wonder what happens if I put it on. Okay. Interesting. So I turn that down. So that's the Cursus Iteratas. So now if you look, it's showing B. So interesting. I wonder how I can completely mute that. So that's the cursus. It's just an oscillator. So that's the oscillator. So that's, you can hear that. So that's interesting. I wonder if there's a way I can, okay, turn that down. Yeah, I'm just, because oscillators don't stop making noise if they're connected. They just oscillate. That's why they're called oscillators. So that's interesting. And I noticed even if you have it turned off, it's still oscillating. I'm trying to figure out how to stop that from happening. There's probably something in this setup I'm doing that's not letting me do that. So I'm going to mute these tracks and just have it, it's on A. So it's getting a signal from B. And I have it just hooked up to B. So if I go back to my settings here, I haven't used my Octatrack in a while, so that's why I'm trying to figure this out. If you haven't done it, and if you put MIDI, you can see MIDI here. So that's a little loud from the mixer. So we don't need that. But if I assign some trigs like here, okay, so I want to mute this one. That's interesting. I got something playing. I guess I have it set, so okay. So, oh, okay, mute here, okay. Well, if I get out of MIDI mode and I mute these tracks. See what happens here. Okay, it looks like I'm doing something wrong here because now I'm getting just a non-stop. I have it connected to pitch. Okay, so that's interesting. I had it working before. Alright, now if I send it a gate signal, maybe, let's see what happens if I connect it to a gate here. If I take a gate signal here. Oh, not working correctly. Okay, so I'm doing something wrong. I have to figure this one out. It is a little tricky being new to this. I haven't used my Octatrack in a while, so I'm just trying to figure out what things I need to check on this. But if I change this to input A, what happens? Input A, okay, what happens here? Interesting. That's interesting. So that seems to be working. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that's interesting. So if I change it to A, it looks like it goes, okay. But it's still showing signal from B, which is interesting. Because it's connected. So it's showing signal from B. Maybe now if I put it on A, what happens? And I put this on a 1. Okay. I know I look like an idiot doing this, but this is all new to me. I was using my A194 that just was a pain in the ass to use. I got it to work, but it was just too much trouble, and I want to just figure this out, be done with it, so I can always just use my Octatrack. Okay, so let's see if we got any better levels. Okay. That sounds like the cursus. And I have some. Oh, you know what? I'm so stupid. I press the T5 and it triggers. Because I have a okay, you know why? Because check this out. So on track 5, I have a clap. So I haven't used my Octatrack in a while. So if I press, it triggers it, which is kind of cool. So I guess there's some reason for live performance for that. Well, I like the drum samples on Octatrack. They're good. Okay, that's cool. So we can see if that's actually the yep, that's the cursus. So if I go to this one, and if we change, we have a couple of things. We have the this hooked up. So I just have the pitch. I'm just going. Okay, that actually took my mixer down. So I have the attack. If I increase the attack, see, that's your envelope. So you can send an envelope. Isn't that cool? So you can actually send an envelope to your modular system. You don't have to use the envelope generator for. Sorry about that shakiness. You don't have to use an envelope generator. And then if I want to do an effect, so if I want to pick a filter, go yes on filter. And I'll pick a so now we have our filter settings. Isn't that cool? So now I can apply a filter and envelope. I can apply a filter and envelope to my modular system. So that's kind of nice. Well, it seems to be working correctly. So it looks like, yeah, it's interesting. It's showing a steady red signal on A that this is connected to, and B, it's showing a flashing signal. And then I do know from reading the manual, if you look at this, I have the MIDI connected to my Octatrack. The MIDI input, I like the TRS cable better. Connected to the MIDI output on my Octatrack. And then here you can tell it's sending and receiving clock because it shows the flashing activity. So, and there's a way to reset this, but I don't want to do that right now. And I do know there's a setting if you go to projects on the Octatrack. So if you go down here, one thing that you do need to do, so if you go MIDI and then you go to control, you want to make sure these are set correctly. So if I go no, you want to go sync. So you want to make sure the transpose, send and receive, clock, send and receive is on. It's really important. And then you go out of that, you can check your channels. So right now, the trig channels are set to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. And I think on the CV.OCD, it's the same thing. For these are CV, A, B, C, and D are control voltage for pitch. And then these are your gates. I'm trying to figure out how it maps to my Octatrack, because that way I can have multiple oscillators and control and mute them and do different patterns. So that's good. So if I do this again, and I think if I get out here, I'm trying to think. Okay, so that's static. Okay. Where's the pitch? There's usually a pitch setting. I don't know where the pitch setting is here. All right. So this is like for LFOs. You can apply LFOs as well. This is cool. It's your envelope settings, effects. So you can apply different effects. This is cool. You don't have to buy a bunch of effects modules. Time. Filter. Cool. So now if we do another patch cable to the OCD, so here we have a lot of gate trigger points on this. So if we just do BAT, which is bass and treble, and I'm gonna venture a guess it would go to 1 for that. And then I have that, and let's see what happens. Okay, that's cool. And if you look on the cursus, it's slashing. So that corresponds to 1. Cool. So you can kind of mix it up a bit. It doesn't mute it though, which is interesting. It only mutes the pitch point, which is interesting. That's what I need to figure out. But if you stop it, it stops. So that's good. That's one thing. And then what happens if we patch another gate? So if we take DFW, which is the wave shaper switch, I think, and patch it to 2, what happens to that? We unmute this. Oh, don't want to do that. And change the tempo. You can still do these switches. Cool. So this is another through one. So it does send signal to this track somehow if you increase the level. Yeah, so maybe I wonder if we mute that. Okay, so it does. So apparently track 2 might be mapped to MIDI track. So track 2 might on a MIDI on the Octatrack might be mapped to 2, which would explain why this goes. But what if we do, I have to do some more experimenting, but I'm glad that I was able to get the basics figured out. Because what's cool is you can do, you can do a few oscillators. So if you do this, and then if I got some samples. That sounds cool. So I'm getting there. It's a tricky process, but I will say this is easier to work with than a stupid Dofer A194, which I'm probably going to sell, the 194 module, and just get something better. But yeah, so that's kind of what I figured out. It looks like it does map A to 1, and B I have to figure out, but just the process of exploration.